In 2018, Marvel's Spider-Man was a web-slinging sensation that captured the hearts of gamers and Marvel fans alike. It was released for the PS4 at the time, later receiving a PS5 remaster and a spin-off in Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, as we all eagerly anticipate its sequel, which is coming out very soon, it's time to explore the things I personally want to see in Marvel's Spider-Man 2 ahead of its release. Firstly, and probably my biggest issue with the original game, was the over-reliance and just overabundance on side content and collectibles, and it was done to just kind of pad out the game. There's just too much of it, and not all of it was interesting. In fact, most of it was not interesting at all. This time around, I kind of want to see less of a focus on quantity and more of a focus on quality. You'll be hearing that a few times, I think, in this video. And that also leads on to my next point. Give us more villains. And I know the first game had a lot of villains, but hear me out. I want to see a rogues gallery that goes beyond what we've seen so far. Some of the best content in the original game involved side villains, and there just wasn't enough of it. You had your Taskmaster and stuff along those lines, and it seemed to be scrapped together content for the most part, but it was still fun, and I want to see more of that, but more in depth, and I'll get into that. Insomniac took the approach of opting for taking down random enemy bases or active repetitive crimes over and over again, and this time I just want more focused side stories with villains that aren't necessarily part of the main story. It would go a long way to, at least for me, elevating the game. Now, what else do I want to see? It's something we already know is happening. I want a bigger, more detailed open world. We need a New York that's even bigger and more detailed than the first game was, and like I said, we're getting that. Reasoning being, I wouldn't normally advocate for larger open worlds, but it's Spider-Man. The main premise of Spider-Man is to be able to web sling across a whole landscape, and we've had 2 games in New York with not many differences, let's be honest, and it's time for something a little different, a little bigger, and we're going to get that, which is awesome. I just want to make sure that point is out there. That is what I want to see. I'd also like to see more dynamic events and similar things happening throughout the day and night in the city. Maybe something similar to Arkham Knight, with Man-Bat randomly showing up. Maybe they could do that here with a certain villain, and it could also lead into certain story elements. I remember in Arkham Knight when I think it's called the Cloudburst explodes and half the city is covered in this kind of foggy gas-like whatever it is. I'd love to see something like that in Spider-Man. Obviously not the same, but they could figure something out. My next suggestion is way less likely, as we really don't know the time frame of the game itself, but I would like to see New York going through different seasons, summer, winter, all of that, as the story progresses. We saw like a winter setting, I believe, in Miles Morales, which was definitely an interesting change from the original game and added a lot to the presentation, but it's unlikely because I doubt the game's going to have a long time frame. My next point is of, I'd say, less interest to me. I'm a big single player story guy, but I'd like to see how this works anyway. How about a co-op Spider-Man game? With 2 main characters, the possibility of a feature like this isn't totally impossible. While it would all depend on how both Miles and Peter are handled during the story, as I'm sure certain elements will make a co-op mode a less viable option, it still leaves the possibility of a future co-op experience, and certainly a better one than what we got with the Avengers game. Again, this isn't something I'm looking for right now, and I know this is about Marvel Spider-Man 2, but it would be a nice thing to see, as long as it doesn't sacrifice, the story's quality. That is my biggest point, and it's also my last point. So, like I said, speaking of story, I want to see a compelling one. It's as simple as that. The first game nailed it in parts, but did leave a lot to be desired, so the sequel needs to push the envelope even further. I'm hoping Insomniac have their creative hats on for this one. There are so many possibilities here for a great story to be told, with the introduction of Venom and Kraven. They're two villains that could go a long way. And while I've never really been disappointed yet by Insomniac, there is a lot of room for improvement. My biggest point in all of this is that I want to focus on quality over quantity, something you heard me say earlier. And this counts for the story too. The first game had cool moments with its version of the Sinister Six, but most of the villains felt like an afterthought compared to Doc Ock. A more focused set of villains with equal time to build each in the main story is the way to go. Using other villains for the side content, like I said earlier, instead is a much better use for them, instead of the collectible approach that we got to side content last time. And it also allows for smaller, more self-contained stories to take place that don't interfere with the main story at all. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 has some big shoes to fill, but with all of the points I mentioned, it could become one of the greatest superhero video games of all time. What do you want to see in the sequel? Let us know in the comments below, and also give us a like and subscribe. It goes a long way to helping us build the channel, and also let us know any other topics you'd like us to talk about.